Stocks have risen while the real economy hemorrhages. In recent months, stocks have risen with the belief that Trump's tax cuts will bring upon renewed investment and economic stimulus. Previously, during the Reagan administration, tax cuts were introduced, and soon after, there was a massive crash. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's get into the stock market today. The first thing I want to mention is what I talked about in the beginning. Am I suggesting that tax cuts are actually going to cause a crash? No, absolutely not. In fact, the best thing you can do for an economy is to bring down the taxation. That way, in fact, as we saw during Kennedy, that by reducing taxation, you will actually bring in more tax revenue. Now, tax revenue is at record highs right now. It continues to go up. But if you wanted it to go up even more, you would reduce taxes. Seems like an interesting thing, but people will spend more money. It's just the way it is. If suddenly your income tax was lower, that means at the end of every paycheck, you have a little bit more money. What are you going to do? Most people, the fact is, they're going to spend it. Perhaps they'll spend it on the wrong things, but it's better in your pocket than theirs, I assure you. Now let's look at this. This is the Dow Jones going back decades, and I wanted to show you something. It's going to be a little blip on the screen here, but I'll show you another chart which is better. Basically, we had some stagnation during the oil shocks era, and you will see that relatively, at least based on this chart, I mean, it's hard to see here, but stagnation, that's what we have. And then you get a starting little run up, and that, what seems to be a little blip on this page, is actually a 40% drop. That's what you'll see here. And in fact, I believe what I show you is the S&P, but they usually work together. But take it for what it is right here. Then obviously we have a major run up afterwards. There's no doubt about that. Look at this. Equities priced in the 1986 tax cuts before crashing, though earnings eventually did surge. Okay, so there's a couple things I want to show you here. You can see that the tax plan was passed, but of course doesn't get implemented until several months later. So think of this when you see finally when the bureaucracy of the Trump administration, the Congress has the power of the purse. They are the ones which are going to ultimately decide if the tax cuts happen. Once this does get passed, whatever it is, even if it's perhaps not what everyone's hoping for, if it does happen, it's going to be several months probably until it is actually implemented. So keep that in mind as well. What I would show you here is that look at the top, look at the bottom. You are looking at a 40% decline. That's the S&P 500 in particular. A 40% decline is serious. Think about today, what would happen? 40% decline would be a major hit. You would have companies perhaps going bankrupt. We'd have another Lehman Brothers moment. 40% is huge. This here just shows you that it doesn't necessarily save the day. There is a lot of factors. I mean, that's not the reason why that the stock market crashed, implementing tax cuts. No. But it does show you that it's not necessarily going to be the saving grace. It is very important. They need to implement tax cuts. They need to get the economy going again. And surely, tax cuts are beneficial. I am definitely in support of that. Now, not tax cuts on, particular sectors. I mean, taxes need to be cut across the board. Even on the so-called 1%, cut the taxes there. I don't care. Just make sure it's on the middle class as well. That's very important. That's the most important, in fact. If you have to cut them all, right across the board, fine, do it. Just reduce the taxation. It's very important. S&P 500 PE expanded considerably in anticipation of the boost to EPS, earnings per share, on lower taxes. So here you see the S&P 500 trailing PE. This in anticipation of that, you see it rising. And PE ratios, as we've talked about before, are very, very dangerous. Up until 87, where you had the whole LTCM scandal that occurred, and this is a very, very important time in the past that many people aren't really aware of, but I do believe that it was a key moment in the financial industry when you saw what happened, the fraud, all of the irrational exuberance that, coined the phrase by Alan Greenspan. This was a time when people today, they don't look back at that, but a lot of what's going on today is the same thing that happened leading up to that crash. I've read multiple books on that crash, and it was quite similar in many ways. I mean, things are a lot worse now. Things are even more exaggerated now. So a 40% crash, I mean, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying that, it's very, very possible. Let's look at this. Student loans, student debt, something that I talk about regularly. It's one of the biggest bubbles that is forming right now. The government, don't worry about it, because just like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the government will bail it out as always. There's no problem with that. Just bail everybody out. Bail out foreign countries, bail out foreign corporations. Don't tell your government who you gave the money to. It's all good. Look at this. A stagnant job market is leaving college grads with few opportunities to find high-paying jobs, which only increases the burden of loan debt. I've referenced this before, but what about the advertisement for McDonald's looking for university college graduates at $9 an hour? That's insane to think about. All that student debt which has been accumulated. This individual went to school hoping for a good job, hoping for a great job, I should say, and instead is working at McDonald's. Now, there's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's, but you would hope that in a job like that, you wouldn't need to go to school and accumulate all this debt. For what? For what? College graduates aren't getting much help from the job market or the economy. Average starting salary for college graduates is declining. In the year 2000, not that long ago, $54,000 and now $50,000. A slow and steady decline. Why? There's various reasons why. Less actual good jobs out there. You have more people wanting those jobs. And there's simply so many people with these type of, the education, whether it's, a simple degree or diplomas or whatever, there's a lot more people that have that in today's day and age. So, the old saying, dime a dozen. This is a big problem because these jobs are really being taken away from people slowly but surely. High paying or I would say good paying jobs like the manufacturing has unfortunately gone overseas. I believe this is a big issue not being discussed quite enough. Look at this. A look into the future. According to the U.S. Department of Education, federal student debt is growing at an annual rate of 17%. That's 7 times more than the current rate of the fake inflation. And it's already long surpassed the national debt in Greece, showing no signs of slowing down. This chart right here, this whole big arrow, is basically showing you the actual debt accumulation. And I believe it's 3.5 trillion what they're showing you. You see a couple points which end up on this. The total cost of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is not the real number, but it's showing you $1.3 trillion. The total GDP of Australia is $1.13 trillion. So it's exceeding all of these things. It's a pretty interesting diagram. Actually, the previous diagram is a really long one. It shows you the infographic, actually, I should say, that shows you a bunch of different detail if you're interested in checking that out. By 2030, the student debt will hit 16.7 trillion with a T. That's more than the current U.S. national debt. I don't know when this chart here was created, but anyway, it's insane. How is this ever going to be paid back? And the fact is that the individuals aren't paying it back. It will be the government that bails it out. And this one hurts. This one really hurts. Okay, here we go. In a new sign that Venezuela's financial crisis is morphing dangerously into a humanitarian one, a new nationwide survey shows that in the past year, nearly 75% of the population has lost an average of 19 pounds for the lack of food. It hurts. It hurts me just reading it. And I feel for the poor people who are suffering. And it's not because this country, Venezuela, doesn't have natural resources, doesn't have the potential to be much, much better, more stable, growing, but no, they're being taken advantage of. I've read that Venezuela has one of the largest oil reserves in the world. They should be booming. There should be a way, if they can't get it going themselves, to bring in companies, give them a stake in there. Allow them to drill. I understand that, there's some countries definitely get taken advantage of, and if you read Vulture's Picnic, you'll get an idea about that, but something's got to happen. There has to be a way to get that oil to translate into food for the people. I mean, there has to be something. I'm not a politician. I'm not, working for one of these major corporations. But the people are suffering. That's all I know. They're sitting on a whole bunch of oil. Make it work. Make it happen. And I recently received an email from an individual in Caracas. I hope he's listening. Hope he's watching. He mentioned this exact thing, and this right here hits home with me after reading it from him. Now I'm reading it again from this article out of Fox. As many as 32% eat only once or twice a day. Now, if you want to eat once a day, if you want to eat twice a day, instead of traditionally, a lot of people, they eat 3 times a day or more. And they want to eat once or twice. I think that's fine. If you choose to do that, that is fine. But if you can't eat 2 or 3 times a day simply because you can't afford it or the food is being rationed, that hurts. 82% of the nation's households live in poverty. 82%. This is an epidemic. This should be sounding the alarms all over the place. This isn't a nation that doesn't have something to give. This is an oil-rich country which is being strangled by, in a way, they have their own government, but also they're being attacked by the vultures. All right, moving on quickly. This is just the radiation which is being experienced in Europe. Huge. We're not talking about Fukushima here. I mean, there's so many plants, nuclear plants that are spilling out radiation into the environment. We've got Fukushima to worry about, and that's just one. That's just one really bad case. Detection of radioactive iodine at trace levels in Europe in January 2017. Brand new information, and you can see all the different spots, all the different regions which are feeling it right now. They use their meters, they detect it, and they say, okay, this is alarming. But shut up. Don't do anything about it. It gets reported like this, but then it's not allowed to make it to the mainstream news, That's just the way it is. And then right here, robots poised to take over a wide range of military jobs. So don't worry about having to go to war. Don't worry about having to do any of your tasks. A robot is going to take your place, and then surely you're going to get your basic guaranteed income, which basically means that you will be living under the poverty line. But hey, what can you do? You'll be living, many, many people to one commune, like a cooperative housing. And maybe you want that, maybe you don't, but you're not going to really have a choice. That is the future. That is coming. It's already making its way. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you will find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. So you can actually look through the book. Just go over to Amazon, because they have a look inside feature that's going to allow you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care.